I think we've got a fairly full room now, so let's dive in because we've got a lot of exciting topics we want to cover. Once again, hello, I'm Remington, the Director of Customer Experience here at Scoop, and we've got a really exciting session for you today. Here's what we have planned. At a high level, our presentation is divided into three main sections. We're going to start by diving into the top solar and renewable trends for 2025. We're going to discuss how they'll have an impact on your operations and how you can stay ahead in this highly competitive and unpredictable solar market. We're also going to talk about how battery storage is no longer really considered an add-on, but it's increasingly becoming an integral component of solar systems. And we're going to talk about software technology trends, how you can position your business to adopt best-in-class software, including the latest AI and automation technology, because this really can make or break your ability to stay competitive. Next, we're going to move onto our best practice segment that we're calling the Smart 6. Freshly updated for 2025, these are 6 best practices that will help you take your operations to the next level. They're based on insights that our team of solution experts have gleaned from hundreds of solar deployments last year. These are spanning residential, commercial, and utility scale projects. Now, you don't need to be using Scoop to be able to take action on these tips. We aim to provide concrete ways you and your team can make changes to your existing operations, regardless of the technology you're using. Having said that, we all know that when it comes to best practices, having the right technology framework can be really helpful, and how critical you quickly roll out and sustain these practices across the team relies on that technology. So to this end, in section 3, we're going to be looking at the Scoop technology platform and how it's making it possible to put these Smart 6 practices into immediate action for your business and your team. Lastly, I'm here to answer any of your questions. So feel free to use Q&A chat actively. I'm going to monitor it throughout the presentation. This is going to allow us to provide better, more relevant webinar for all of you. Before we dive in, I want to quickly take a moment and share who we are and why we have valuable insight on optimizing solar and renewable operations. At Scoop, we've had the privilege of working with hundreds of solar and renewable energy companies, helping them automate and optimize their operations. But what truly sets us apart and why we're able to share these strategies today is that we don't just offer a technology platform to solve problems. We work alongside our customers as implementation experts. That means we work hand in hand with them to put best practices into action and ultimately build bulletproof operations. So over the years, that means we get to see what works and what doesn't. We've worked continuously to refine processes, reduce bottlenecks, and help companies operate more efficiently. So today, we're really excited to share these insights with you. And let's dive in. I want to start today's session by taking a step back and looking at where the solar industry stands today. We all know that solar has seen incredible growth in the past decade. And over the next 5 years, despite some volatility, installations are projected to hold strong at around 40 to 45 gigawatts annually. The demand for solar and storage continues to grow, and this is being driven by reduction in hardware costs, increase in production efficiency, and rising utility costs. Together, these make solar economically viable even without any incentives. And here's the thing that you already know, but it's probably worth repeating. Long-term success in solar isn't just about riding the next wave of growth. It's about building a business that thrives through market shifts, policy changes, and unexpected challenges. The fact is, the markets will evolve. Incentives will come and go. And in the midst of all of that, companies that prioritize efficiency and resilience are the ones that stay ahead. The principle is that with scalable systems and processes, You're not scrambling to react, but you're leading with confidence and are able to not only adapt to change, but take advantage of opportunities that others can't. Now, let's dive into something more specific. These are some trends we're seeing that are really impacting the solar landscape. First of all, solar plus storage isn't just an add-on anymore. It's quickly becoming the new standard. Customers aren't just looking for solar panels. What they want is energy independence. They want backup power, and they want protection against rising electricity costs. And we're seeing this reflected in the numbers. Just a few years ago, only 12% of solar installations were paired with storage. That number has grown a lot to where we are today, and projected that by 2028, it's going to grow to 28%. That's more than doubling since 2013. It's a massive shift in just a few years. Last week, SEIA announced their projection for 55% more storage by 2030 to help renewables feed the surging demand both in commercial and residential sectors. So, for solar companies, this can either be a massive opportunity or a challenge if your operations aren't built to take on more complexity. The companies that can easily build storage into their sales, design, and installation processes will have a clear advantage. They're going to be able to offer more valuable solutions. They're going to win bigger projects, and they're going to capture more revenue. But for companies that aren't flexible or treat storage as an afterthought, it's going to quickly become a bottleneck. It's going to add complexity to your designs. It's going to delay projects, and it's going to cause unexpected costs. So the reality, solar plus storage, no longer optional. It's where the market is heading. The importance is in your operation being ready to scale with it and capture the market rather than fall behind. Now, we can't talk about shifts in the solar industry and the way solar companies are managing operations without discussing the massive evolution of software technology, specifically automation and AI. Relying on clunky manual spreadsheets isn't cutting it anymore. Even when you implement technology, it's still not enough if that's not the right technology. Being on the front lines of this, we're seeing a shift away from these legacy all-in-one platforms that try to do everything but fall short in major areas. Instead, what we notice is that the companies leading the way are moving to what's called a best of breed approach. They're using specialized software tools that then integrate seamlessly to handle different parts of each of their business. This kind of digital transformation isn't just about efficiency, but it's about setting themselves up for long-term success. Now, in my role, I get to talk to dozens of solar companies every single week. Some of those are established. Some of those are brand new. The new companies are already starting out with using the best of breed approach and this new technology in each area of their business. And the older ones that are using these so-called all-in-one platforms are struggling to keep up because they're not able to bring in new tools as they need to. Back in the day, these all-in-one platforms were all of the trend. But we're seeing that reversing because there's now game-changing technology out there that you need to adopt. And by definition, all-in-one technologies are designed to keep you from doing that. One thing I consistently advise my customers is to pay attention to what's happening in the technology landscape. Think about all of those new companies that are just starting out today. They're building their operations on the best tools in the market available. And that's automatically going to place them ahead of older, outdated systems and tools. So if you're running your operations on an all-in-one system or still relying on manual spreadsheets, it's really time to rethink your technology strategy. The best approach is to adopt a modular system where each tool does what it does best while integrating with the rest. This way, you're going to gain more flexibility and you're going to be able to future-proof your operations. Trust me, your competitors are already making these changes, and you don't want to be left behind. All right, with those high-level trends in mind, now let's shift to some more practical gears. And we're going to dive into 6 key process changes that will have a major impact on how efficiently you can complete your installations. As mentioned, these practices that our team of solution experts have gleaned from hundreds of actual deployments, so they represent areas with the biggest potential for impact. For each process change, I'm going to walk you through 2 elements. The first is a core practice. It's the essential part of this that we recommend you action quickly, and you're going to achieve the most impact. Followed up by a level up tip, which is going to kind of take it to the next level, take it beyond what it's capable of. So with that, let's get into our first process change. Now, in the early days of most solar businesses, it's easy to stay on top of every project. It's easy to make sure that every step is followed and that things don't fall through the cracks. In fact, a lot of companies build their success on the early stage reputation they get for quality work. This works well when there's a few projects. But we notice that as businesses grow, the key people who kind of facilitate this can't be everywhere at once. With more sales and more moving parts in the business, this we'll just figure it out as we go approach stops scaling. You can't be sure that the processes are followed consistently. Small mistakes begin to creep in and key details start to slip. The typical reaction we see is to bring in project managers and more staff to help. But these people come in without a clear process or systems to track their progress. And they end up chasing updates and putting out fires themselves. So just when you think that you're growing and succeeding and bringing in more people to help you, things start to go wrong. Now, let's talk about how we can fix this. The lesson learned over the projects is that what got you here today won't get you to tomorrow. In order to scale your success, you need to standardize your workflows. You can start this by documenting your ideal workflow. Sit down and map out exactly how projects should move from start to finish, and clearly define who is responsible at each stage of that process. Outline expected timelines. Put together key tasks, and include step-by-step instructions for the tools that need to be used at that time. Now, exceptions are inevitable. I haven't encountered a company that doesn't have exceptions to their core process. So you want to build alternate workflows that, when an exception happens, can guide the project back on track as quickly as possible. And beyond just documenting this, you need visibility into it. You need a way to see at a glance where each of your projects stands in the process. And this is going to let you handle higher volume without losing control. When you can quickly pinpoint where a project is stuck and what's needed to move it forward and who's responsible for it, that's when you start getting efficiency at scale. Now, when working with installers, what we've learned is that the absolute best practice is not just standardizing your workflows, but continuously refining and optimizing them. No matter how well you document your process at the beginning, there will always be new challenges, new edge cases, and new opportunities to optimize. That's why it's critical to have a clear owner for every team's process. This is a single person who's responsible not just for maintaining the documentation or training your new hires, but they're actively improving efficiency. They should be looking for ways to speed up your workflows. They should be looking for ways to automate your repetitive tasks and permanently eliminate bottlenecks. Because when your process evolves with your business, that's when you truly build a system that can scale. Next up, Another thing that I constantly hear from installers is feeling stuck in a constant game of catch up with their field teams. And you may have been here too. You're waiting on an update. You're scrambling to find the right site photos, or you're realizing too late that a critical step was missed on site. At first, these issues are minor, but as you add more and more projects to your queue, that back and forth starts to snowball and it causes real delays, rework, and frustrations across the whole team. The disconnect usually happens when companies outgrow what's called hands-on leadership, right? That's having a early employee, a founder, a co-founder on every single field site. As new crews are added and as your business grows, those leaders have to shift into the office. And then things start to slip through the cracks. Your office teams rely on accurate field data to do their job. But if your field crews don't have clear instructions and an easy way to capture that information, communication can break down. So, how do we fix it? The key is setting up structured, real-time systems for field reporting and building that into your workflow. First, you need to make documentation a standard part of every field team's process. They should be logging site conditions, hazards, photos, and updates directly into some sort of mobile system they can bring with them in real time before they leave the job site. This eliminates the need for the office team to chase down missing information later. You also need to define exactly what is needed for every different type of project. Field teams shouldn't have to guess. So, create a standardized checklist that clearly outlines the required site photos, the measurements and details, and it's adapted to each project and equipment type. So remember we were saying batteries are becoming the new standard? That needs to be an option. And when you have a battery, different information is required and the field team need to know that. And then finally, assign a designated person on each crew who's responsible to make sure that that checklist is completed before they move on. Also, ensure that you're automating this accountability. If there's a required site document or photo that isn't uploaded, you need a system that's able to flag it before they leave the site and before the project moves to the next phase. This way, your quality control happens in real time instead of after the fact. And you don't waste time and money doing a repeat truck roll, gathering information that wasn't collected when it should have been. Now, it's important to remember that no matter how robust a system you build, exceptions and mistakes can occur. A good business is one that has a culture and skill that allows people to pivot quickly and problem solve. But a great business goes one step further, and it ensures that it's tracking what exceptions and mistakes are happening over a longer period of time, and then addresses the root causes. If teams are constantly dealing with the same information, like missing site documents, incorrect access instructions, wrong equipment deliveries, you need a system that logs these issues and spots the patterns and helps you correct them. Okay. Tip number 3. Clear communication is just as important as quality installs. And if you handle only a couple projects at once, this can be very simple. You can easily keep customers updated throughout the process through personal phone calls or emails and make sure they feel heard and valued. This builds trust and often builds those first positive reviews that build a business. But as more projects come in, it becomes harder to maintain that personal touch. Your teams start to develop their own communication strategies, which are often inconsistent. So your customer may get lots of updates early on from a sales rep or the permitting team, but then it drops when it moves to the next phase. And that doesn't translate to a good experience. So what's the solution? It comes down to clearly defining a customer communication strategy and sticking to it. Your customers should never have to wonder what's happening with the project. They should know exactly when to expect their updates. And that starts with setting clear milestones. From the very beginning, at your project kickoff, make sure they, your customer, have a confirmed timeline, that they know who their project manager is, and that they have the right contact information. As the project moves forward, keep them informed at key stages. We always recommend you communicate with your customers when their permits are approved, when your materials are ordered, and the installation is scheduled. These moments give customers confidence that things are progressing. And once the installation is complete, don't just disappear. Let them know what's next, whether that's PTO, whether you have some maintenance tips or service information for them. Even something as simple as sending high quality photos or some drone footage of the final installation, especially from angles that the customer can't normally see, helps reinforce this great experience. Now, to effectively communicate all of this and in a timely manner, it can be incredibly challenging. And it's really hard if you're trying to do it manually and rely on team members remembering to do it. So, automating customer updates becomes critical. By automating these communications, your customers get the information they need when they need it, and your team can focus on more important tasks. So, to recap, by defining communication milestones, standardizing your updates, and using automations to streamline the process, you ensure that your customers feel well taken care of. You reduce the unnecessary back and forth, and ultimately, you improve your reviews as well. Now, tip number 4. When everything goes according to plan, projects move really smoothly from one stage to the next. But when something unexpected happens, like a denied permit, a missing part, or a change order, those projects can quickly spiral or end up in limbo. This happens when there's no clear owner, and that delay stretches on. Team members often assume that someone else is handling it, and what could have been a very quick fix can end up stalling projects for weeks. And often what we find is it takes senior leadership noticing the issue, stepping in with the solution, and personally pushing that forward to get things back on track. That's where data comes in. With the right system in place, you don't have to wait until problems become fires. Instead, you can implement an automated warning system that flags when projects are at a risk of running over time or budget. Think of a color-coded dashboard. Green means everything's moving as expected. Yellow is telling you there's a potential issue. Red means urgent, you need to address it. Now, our next tip to level this up, and what we've seen customers implement that's worked really, really well, is not just relying on these alerts, but scheduling a weekly or sometimes even twice a week review of your flagged projects with key team members. Then you make sure at the same time that those process owners are involved. Remember those people I spoke about earlier who are tasked with improving processes? They should be looking at those bottlenecks, not just to put out the fires on those specific projects, but to identify long-term fixes that can improve your efficiency across the board. So have a system that is going to flag and tell you when projects are at risk, and then have a regular meeting where you can get together and look at only those projects and quickly unlock them and push them forward. Okay, if you're a small company, it's easy for everyone to be on the same page. Everyone is often in the same physical office, and you're talking constantly. You probably have regular check-ins where everyone runs through a project status, and you notice nothing's falling through the cracks. But what we see time and time again is as that workload increases, you're not just juggling a few projects, you're managing a lot more, often now across new people, new departments, new physical offices. One of the biggest things we hear about that you might have experienced is messy handoffs. And I have an example that might sound familiar. You have a project manager who asks the designer if they have time to work on another project. The designer says yes and assumes that they're going to get a formal handoff. But meanwhile, The project manager thinks that that confirmation was the designer taking responsibility. So now no one's following up with each other. And before you know it, that project is stalled. No one even realizes it until it becomes a bigger issue. In order to avoid this, you need clear ownership. Everyone should know exactly which projects or tasks they're responsible for, with no guessing or assumptions. When each person has a defined to-do list, they can focus on getting those done instead of spending their time figuring out what to do next, which incidentally also reduces the anxiety of team members. We've also found that this makes it easier for team leads to spot workload issues before they turn into bottlenecks. And if someone's away for a couple days, managers can quickly jump in, see what they were working on, and reassign it so that nothing sits idle. It also helps, and the level up here, is to organize this in a way that lets teams batch similar tasks instead of constantly switching mental gears. Instead of trying to track down what's in design, you want to break it down all the way into what's waiting to start, what's in progress, what's ready for review. That way, your designers can get into the flow and just knock out a bunch of drafts at once, while engineers can tackle reviews all at once instead of bouncing back and forth between different mindsets. I like to really set clear weekly deadlines, like getting the initial designs done by Wednesday, and then everything's reviewed by Friday. When you batch the work and have these deadlines, it keeps everything moving without that last minute scramble. Now, I use designers as my example here, but the logic applies to almost every team. Okay, we're on to our last tip of the day. In the early days of a growing company, technology is often viewed as a luxury that you don't quite need. As your installs increase, you start prioritize hiring project managers, designers, and operation leads. And as these individuals get busier, they go and start independently looking for pieces of technology to help them better manage their specific process. When this happens, two things occur. The first, they often end up selecting a tool that only helps their specific problem. And the second, it leads them to manage the technology off the side of their desk. And let's face it, a lot of these people don't have the time or skill to manage complex pieces of technology. As an organization, before you know it, you end up with a patchwork of tools with no clear strategy or connectivity. This leads to a lot of frustration and wasted time. Problems will keep coming up, and those same team members who brought in the technology are left to figure out how to fix it. Again, often in isolation. Companies find themselves rotating through new tools, hoping that one of them is going to solve the issue. This is actually the moment when you're most likely to fall into another trap, and that's the all-in-one technology. This is when it becomes super tempting to find one piece of software that on the surface looks to solve all of your problems in one place. But as we've discussed, the reality is that these all-in-one tools only lead you into a different type of problem. That's why we highly recommend hiring a dedicated technology implementation manager. Now, you might be thinking, do I really need to hire someone just for technology? Isn't that an extra salary I don't have room for? Especially when we could hire someone in a role like operations or project manager. And that's a very fair concern, especially when you're smaller and every hire is a big investment. But here's the thing. This one hire will directly impact how efficiently your company and your team can grow. And in the long run, it's one of the most valuable investments you can make. This person's role is to work closely across all of your teams to help them select, deploy, and integrate the tools that they need. Instead of each department scrambling to figure out what tool works best. And let's face it, This takes them away from their responsibility and ends up costing you more. And it's not even their strong suit or their skill set. Instead, you have one expert whose job it is to step in and make sure that all works seamlessly. It shifts your business from technology being a constant frustration to becoming a solution, a differentiator, and a growth engine for your business. Now, one of the biggest challenges is the communication gap that occurs between team members and a technology team. When teams only get to communicate issues through formal channels, it feels like their concerns feel on deaf ears. They struggle to explain how maybe a small change can make a big difference in the way they do their job. And before long, that frustration grows on both sides. To address this, best practice is to set up a regular meeting where your different stakeholders and your tech leads come together. And I want to clarify, these meetings should not become about troubleshooting. You should not be going through individual tickets. These are to discuss the efficiency and the effectiveness of the tools you have. They're to address adoption challenges and to look for new opportunities. This helps everyone stay on the same page, and it makes sure your issues don't get lost in the shuffle or lead to passive resistance from team members who feel that they're not heard. Okay, we've covered a lot of information, and I know it can be overwhelming to figure out exactly how to implement all these changes and make them actionable right away. And that's where Scoop comes in. So Scoop is a central operations hub for solar and renewable installers. Unlike legacy all-in-one platforms that promise the moon and underdeliver, basically giving you functionality that's a mile wide and an inch deep. We know from experience that market leaders need to tap into the best-in-class tools. What they also need is for all of their tools and their teams to work together. With the Scoop Central Operations Hub, we enable you to connect all of your teams and your tools together to give each person a custom tailored view to manage their part while still connected to the rest of the business. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're not just providing a platform. Sure, we do provide tools that help automate and streamline operations. But what truly sets us apart is that we work alongside you as a consultant and implementation expert. We've had the privilege of helping hundreds of solar and renewable energy companies optimize their operations. And not just with technology, but actively collaborating with them to put best practices into action. So, while the strategies we shared today are valuable, we are here to make them actionable. So, that brings us to the end of our presentation. I really hope that you gained some valuable insight. And if you're not using Scoop, I'd love to have a conversation about how we can streamline your operations. I just put a link in the chat, which you can use to book a time with us. Now, for any of our current customers that might be in the room, if you would like to implement any of the strategies we discussed today, don't hesitate to reach out to your customer success manager. We can help you get those changes in place and in motion for you right away. So, thanks again, everyone. I want you to all have a fantastic day.